Hello, I hope you're well. Welcome back to my channel. Today's video is a beginner's guide to Tennessee Williams. Now, this is going to be the perfect video for anyone who wants to read more plays but doesn't know where to start, or perhaps wants to read more modern plays that aren't William Shakespeare, or for anyone who is interested in Tennessee Williams but doesn't necessarily know where to start with his extensive backlist. Now, he is basically one of the godfathers of 20th century American drama, and he also happens to be a personal favorite of mine, so much so that my senior thesis was on Tennessee Williams. And I spent the entire summer before my senior year at university reading all 25 of his full-length plays and annotating them within an inch of their life. And then I spent the entire senior year reading, rereading, analyzing, doing more annotating in order to write my 60 to 65 page senior thesis on him. And so I've spent a lot of time with his works and think they are phenomenal. I also know that a lot of his works tend to be somewhat biographical or are very heavily inspired by his life, especially with certain themes. So he tends to write a lot about sexuality, especially repressed sexuality, because he was a gay man living at a time when queerness was taboo. But he also writes a lot about mental health and mental illness, partly because his sister was diagnosed with schizophrenia, if I'm remembering correctly, and was lobotomized, and so ended up spending the rest of her life in an institution. So that was something that he wrote about quite extensively as well. But as far as plays, there's just so many layers to each of his works. The characters are really compelling, and they are wonderful to read, they are wonderful to watch on stage, and in many of the film adaptations that have been produced in the last, I want to say, 75 years or so. So yeah, I just want to talk about 5 of the plays that I think are a good starting point for anyone who is interested in Tennessee Williams. So why don't we just dive right in? The first play that I want to talk about is Glass Menagerie. Now, I feel like most high schoolers in the United States have probably read Glass Menagerie. This one is very popular on high school curriculums, or curriculi. I need to look that up, but not right now. Anyway, it's fairly popular, and I think that's partly because it's quote-unquote the least racy of Tennessee Williams plays. It's not dealing with anything that is too taboo or uncomfortable. It's not dealing with any sexual violence, which features in quite a few of Tennessee Williams plays. And so because of that, I think a lot of high school teachers prefer to teach this one. It is an interesting play, but of Tennessee Williams plays, I would have to say that this is one that is probably not my favorite, because. But it is the story of Amanda and her 2 children, Laura and Tom. And Amanda is this fading middle-aged Southern belle, and she has got it in her craw that she needs to find her daughter Laura a suitor. And Laura is debilitatingly shy, and she also has a limp. But Tom, her brother, decides to bring home one of his co-workers, and Amanda goes into matchmaking mode, and the play is really about everything that happens as a result of these interactions. So it is a memory play. It's told from Tom's memory, and it deals with some really interesting themes when it comes to reality versus fantasy and escape. There's a lot of symbolism within the play itself when it comes to the actual glass menagerie and the unicorn, which I think because of all of those elements, it also lends itself to being on high school curriculum, because you can talk about sort of these literary devices, and they're pretty overt. But as I said, it's not one of my favorite Tennessee Williams plays, but I put it on this list because it is considered somewhat autobiographical, and to understand Tennessee Williams, and his plays, I think that is valuable. Next, we're going to talk about my favorite Tennessee Williams play, and this is really the play that years ago started my love and obsession with Tennessee Williams, and that is Cat on a Hot Tin Roof. Now, this is one of my most beloved books, but actually I saw the film adaptation with Elizabeth Taylor and Paul Newman countless times before I ever picked up the play to read it itself. And so the adaptation is good, but there was a lot I was missing because of the Hays Code with film and what could and could not be shown on screen. The play is like a million times better, and considering how much I love that adaptation, that tells you a lot about how amazing this play is. But this is a play that is set in Mississippi, and it really is a family drama. So it is about the Pollitts, and they're all descending on the family's plantation in order to celebrate Big Daddy's birthday. And Big Daddy has also just gotten back from this clinic, and he's been given a clean bill of health, except maybe it's not as clean as everyone is being led to believe. But the play is really about all of the drama and relationships within this family. So it's about the two brothers who are fighting with each other for the inheritance that they would get from their father. It is about Brick and Maggie, husband and wife, and their melodrama. It is about Maggie versus Brick's brother and his sister-in-law and their relationship. It is about Brick and his father, so about a father-son relationship. But yeah, there's just a lot, and it's really like a powder keg of a situation with a family, which I feel like a lot of us can relate to. Like, we've all had those awkward holidays where just everything goes boom, and this is what happens. Things go boom, and it's fabulous. The characters are really, really compelling, really interesting. Their interactions and the dialogue is really interesting, and the themes that the play really talks about are also just really compelling. So it deals with sexual desire, but specifically the repression of sexual desire. It deals with lying and mendacity, and this play made me fall in love with the word mendacity, and it comes up time and time again in this play, and it's just awesome. It also deals with, as I said, father-son relationships, but it's just a phenomenal play in my opinion, and Maggie the cat as a character is just like chef's kiss. She's the sort of character that if I were ever to go on stage, I would want to play her. Like, there's just something about her that is magnetic, and I love it. But yeah, this is just a phenomenal play, and there's so much going on, and I love a good family drama, so if you're someone who likes that, highly recommend it. So the next play, which is probably among one of my favorite Tennessee Williams plays, is Suddenly Last Summer. And if Glass Menagerie is the most suitable for school, I would say that Suddenly Last Summer is probably the least suitable, because it deals with some topics that I could see teachers not wanting to bring up in conversation. It deals with pedophilia, there's murder, and there's some other stuff that I wish I could talk about, but I can't because it's a spoiler. But yeah, it's not suitable for work or school, probably. But it is one of the plays that I think has some of the most gothic elements to it, which is my cup of tea, personally. The play is about Mrs. Venable, and she is the mother to a recently deceased son who was a poet, and she will do just about anything to preserve her son's reputation and legacy now that he's dead, including trying to lobotomize her own niece to prevent her from talking. And Mrs. Venable, while her son was alive, also enabled a lot of his criminal activity. So it's this play about this somewhat unlikable character, Mrs. Venable, her son Sebastian, who is dead, and then also Catherine, the niece, and Sebastian's cousin. And this is a play that I really like it because it's all about like dichotomies and balance, if that makes any sense. So it's about morality as much as it is about corruption. It's about civilization as much as it is like barbarity. It is about what is rational and what is irrational. And it's just really interesting to kind of have this light versus dark, black versus white, like that split in balance and looking for that balance throughout. But for me, I love the gothic elements of the play itself. It is very, very dark, which is also something I am drawn to. But I like the fact, too, that a lot of the characters are unreliable. And some of them, like Mrs. Venable and Sebastian, are highly unlikable. But that's kind of the magic of Tennessee Williams. Like, he makes you still want to know everything that's going on, and it's the sort of play that you're slowly building towards finding out everything that Sebastian has done, and, like, it's just great. Like, love it. Next up is Streetcar Named Desire. Now, to be honest, you couldn't talk about Tennessee Williams and not bring up this play. I think it's his most performed play of all time. It's been adapted into a very famous movie, and if you didn't read Glass Menagerie in school, you likely read this one, because it's usually one of the two. I think partly because some of the themes that they address are very similar. You have another Fading Southern Belle here, and you also have a play that is very much about reality versus fantasy. But this play is just like scrumptious in my opinion, because the characters are just so volatile. Like, the physicality when you see this on stage is amazing, but the characters themselves are just like explosive. I know I just talked about that with Cat on a Hot Tin Roof as well, but it's very true here too. And this is a play that is set in New Orleans. The Fading Southern Belle is Blanche Dubois, and Blanche has recently lost the ancestral home, Belle Reve, and is now basically decided to move in indefinitely with her sister Stella and Stanley, her brother-in-law. And she is very disdainful of the lifestyle her sister is now living. Like, she thinks the apartment is very shabby, she doesn't like the people they fraternize with. Like, Blanche, although she's basically homeless and doesn't have a penny to her name, still is living under this, like, illusion that she is, like, a society girl with money and that sort of thing. And the fact that Stella has kind of let that all go and is happy and content to live the way she is bugs her. But because of this, there is animosity between Stanley and Blanche. And this is one of the plays that actually, like, spans several months, rather than, like, focusing on a particular evening or a particular day. And over the course of the play, you have this realization that Blanche is basically telling herself lies, creating these fantasies to basically cope with everything that she's lost, but also to hide some of her past. And over the course of the play, Stanley is becoming more and more aware of these lies, and also there are rumors that he hears, and the truth eventually comes out. But yeah, there is a reason that this play is as popular as it is, and the hype is well worth it. I've seen it on stage a number of times at this point, and it feels a little bit different every time. It's also a play that every time I read it, it feels a little bit different. I gain something new from it every single time. But yeah, it's just one of those that the relationship between Blanche and reality, the relationship between Blanche and her sister, Blanche and Stella, it's all just so good. And it's just a play that it touches upon class too, and is really interesting in that way as well. So I would recommend it probably as if you haven't read anything by Tennessee Williams, I would recommend this one first, because it is something. And the last play that I want to talk about is Summer and Smoke, which is probably one of Tennessee Williams' lesser known plays, but I wanted to add it here because I do think that it shows a different side to Tennessee Williams as a playwright. A lot of his plays are very, like, volatile and maybe visceral, maybe. Whereas this feels softer in some ways. The relationship is softer and more romantic, kind of. And there's also this, like, allegorical element to it, which, of all these plays, it's definitely the most allegorical. I would argue probably the most allegorical of any of Tennessee Williams' plays. But it is the story of Alma, who is this minister's daughter who is in love with the boy next door, a guy named John, who is a budding doctor. Now, this is kind of a setup we all know. The problem is that Alma is very innocent, very, very chaste, to the point that she is repulsed by sexual desire and the idea of sexual contact. Now, John, dear old John, is a bit of a hedonist, and he loves sex, and he loves drinking, and he loves gambling. So these are two individuals who are polar opposites, and this is a story about their evolution, because where they both start out is not where they end. But this is very much a play that is kind of about the, like, spiritual and the physical within individuals, and it's very much about the, like, spiritual and sexual relationship between these characters. And it's just, there's something about it, like, I don't necessarily know how to articulate it, but it's one of the 25 that I remember reading, and it just stuck with me. Like, there's a there. This is one that I've never seen an adaptation for, never seen on stage, but these characters and the evolution they go through, the, like, character development over the course of the play is just something. Let me just put it that way. Like, it is something. So yeah, it's very different in tone and feel, I think, from the other 4 that I've spoken about, but it's definitely a piece by Tennessee Williams that I would recommend. But yeah, those are the 5 plays that I would recommend for anyone who wants to learn a little bit more about Tennessee Williams, or anyone who's interested in reading more plays or learning more about American theater. They're just ones that I think are really, really good. And if anyone is interested in any of the other 20 plays that he wrote, certainly let me know in the comment section. But I do hope that you enjoyed this video, and if you did, be sure to give it a thumbs up, comment, and subscribe, and I will see you next time. Bye!